All right. So now what we're going to look at is the semester final. And so what I'm looking at for the semester final, I thought about a couple different things. I just think the best way to do the semester final is to actually have you guys do a project. You can either do it as a paper or as a video. And I just think it's probably best fitting because, as we're looking at the curves, so we're looking at the coronavirus, and they talk about flattening the curve. Flattening the curve, we want this. And so they have different diagrams and things like that, and they talk about flattening it. And so that's what I want you to do. I want you to find a couple of different diagrams that they have out there and actually put them in to a paper or put them into your video. You can have them, just hold them up to your video and show and say, well, here is what we're looking at for the curve, and we want to flatten this, okay? And so if we look at the graphs that we currently have, we have the chi-squared, we have the t, we have the z-scores, and so we have all those different scores, and that's what it is. It's a normal distribution, or it's a chi-square distribution. And so for the final, what I want you to do is I want you to look at it and say, well, what does this curve that they're talking about, how the virus outbreaks, and you have the peak of it and things like that, and they talk about flattening it. So if the virus outbreak is what kind of a curve? And then we talk about flattening it, and they're trying to get into what kind of a curve. And, what I want you to do is, so if you have a paper on it, you can say, well, currently it looks like this curve, and then we'd like to get it down to this curve, and also give me rationales. Why do we want to flatten the curve? Why is it so important? Just a little hint on that. Think about the medical system and why it would be important to flatten it instead of have a giant spike and then drop down. You can look at northern Italy and think about what they're doing. And I'm not really looking at a full research paper on this. So you don't have to say, oh, well, this source came from USA Today, and it shows the curve spike, and this is what it is flattening it. I want it in your words. I don't want a true research paper. I want to know what is your thoughts, what is your opinion, but I want you to tie it into our stats program, into our stats class, and to be understand, these are things that we're looking at. And when you're looking at those curves, you're truly looking at the same curves that we have. You're just thinking about the different degrees of freedom and things like that. So, talk about degrees of freedom, and most of the information that I want you to pull is out of the book. I don't want you going out, finding a whole bunch of resources and, writing a full paper. You can say, hey, we found out about the z-score and a normal distribution and this, this, and this. When they talk about flattening it, also think about when you're talking about it, I want you to think about your numbers. When we talk about the spike here, why is it so important to flatten this curve? Think about the total population of the U.S. and, if you want to talk about the other countries and things like that, that's fine. And if you want to kind of track some of those, it's up to you. So, you can put as much or as little into it. If you put very little into it, I might say, hey, give me a little bit more, for full credit. And that's what I'm looking at. I think this is a really good point that we can look at it and say, hey, this looks like this curve. And, just relate it back to stuff that you've actually studied and to really understand what's going on with this and, think about some of the cases and say, why is it so important? Okay. So I just think this is a really good semester final for you guys. Let me know if you do have any questions. I'd be glad to give you a direction. Don't ask too many because I'll end up doing the whole thing for you. This is one of those things that I've really been watching and looking at, analyzing, and I think that's why it's really good for you guys to look at it and think about it that way too. Just another way to push in the stats into your everyday lives that you're seeing.